Hello, hello, hello. That's working fine. Perfect.
How do we start?
We're back for take two. Battery died. The camera's got ADHD too. Right. Welcome back. Part two with Emily Killick. We're going to be talking about ADHD and I guess our personal experiences, and this is very much off the cuff, no script. Give you a little bit of insight, I guess, from my perspective. I've not prepared anything, so you can see what it's like to be inside the brain of somebody that is living with ADHD.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, Christ.
Yeah, it's difficult to know where to start, isn't it? Because it's such a big thing that changes. I find I learn more about myself almost every day.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is like when I do something impulsive or I do something crazy, and I'm like, yes, that's a big one for me. I don't know whether that's a huge thing you find in your life. Yeah.
Very impulsive. Everything has to be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
I can't start something and do it half-assed. There's always this sense of perfection, doing something perfectly, I guess, straight in. Because I can't just, I guess it's the same with having gone out and having a couple of drinks and stuff. It's never just a couple of drinks. I have to take it so far that it becomes unreasonable.
Anything you do, you have to take to the just extreme, I think. Yeah, you
Absolutely.
Can't do something in the way that your friends might be doing it. You're either doing it flat out, like 150%, rather than just taking a little go at things. It's kind of all or nothing, I think.
Yeah. And I guess for me, a good place to start is probably how ADHD comes to materialize in one's life. So ADHD in its simplest form is childhood trauma. And that may be as a result of several things. It might not necessarily be the sort of trauma that most people will associate with. It could just be a lack of love or a lack of nurturing, a very loud and argumentative parental household where the child thinks that the parents are arguing as a result of them. And that starts very young. Babies are incredibly intelligent, and my daughter is a year and a couple of months old, and after she was born, crashed and burned really hard with my ADHD, the hardest I've ever crashed and burned. And I felt it was as a result of everything feeling incumbent on me to provide her with the life that I want for her and not the one that I have for myself. Yeah, it's tough, because how are you the perfect parent to your children? And I think in its simplest form, show up for them, love them. If there's problems in the relationship, deal with those problems outside of the home. Seek professional help. Fighting in front of the kids is not a good idea because it sets the wrong precedent. If you're fighting for the right things, different. If you're fighting for love and you're fighting for commendable things, then yes. But if you're fighting because there is disparity in the relationship, then that's very damaging. And also, single mums. Very difficult for single mums. My sister's boy has ADHD. She raised him herself. She did the best that she could. But he's got ADHD as the result of having an absent father, not having that network around him to help the prefrontal cortex develop, to have the associations that normal people do with the development of dopamine and serotonin. We don't have those things because the brain didn't develop that way. It developed in a state of trauma. And that might not be for everyone. It might not. There's other avenues that are a causality for ADHD. Yeah, mine was a lack of cheerleading. nobody ever showing up for my sporting events, and then me becoming incredibly naughty. And I realized this after having spoken to several therapists and people who I hated. I hated the idea of therapy, and it sort of materialized in that I wasn't doing those things because I was naughty. I was doing those things for validation and my parents' attention.
It's not, that's...
It was the only time I got their attention.
Yeah. And of course you would do things if that's what got you attention, and that's why they say, isn't it, with parenting, to focus on what you want to increase. And even in life, just nothing to do with ADHD as well, I think that's a good tip, because what you focus on does tend to increase, and there's a whole thing of manifesting and all of those things, but also in parenting and with ADHD, what you focus on very much does increase, in my experience. So if people were praising me for the good that I was doing, that tended to increase. If people were, or teachers particularly, I was lucky in that my home life was my mum was very good at dealing with it. But at school, it was very much like, if you're constantly just talking about all the negative things I was doing, that was getting attention. That was, and not deliberately, but completely subconsciously. I wasn't thinking, I'm going to be naughty now. It wasn't like that. It's the way my brain was working. And the more they focused on me not behaving, on me not doing well, the more that tended to happen. So very much so, if you're watching this and you're a parent of someone with ADHD, or you're a friend or something, I think it's important to always praise the positive as well. So I do think that makes that increase what you focus on. Yeah, absolutely. And I find with so many people that are in relationships with somebody that has ADHD, they don't know how to deal with it. It's incredibly difficult, because you could probably, in most cases, be associated with somebody that suffers with like bipolar disorder, because you might be one way a certain minute and the other way the next minute. And it's not because you have bipolar disorder, it's because your brain doesn't function the normal way that somebody else's would. You'll be hyper-focusing on something that is, in that moment in time, so important to you that you need to conclude and resolve and bring to its end. And then somebody comes to you with something else, and they are interrupting your force and your focus. And so you then might have words with that individual that might hurt them, unintentionally in doing so, but still be focused here. And then once you've felt that you've dealt with that, you then realize that what you've done there might have been a little bit damaging, but it's not with intention. It's like with my wife and with several other people that I've been with in the past, and friends and stuff, I've had to like explain several times. It's like, I don't hate you, and it's like I'm not having these opinions and these views about you. This is a fleeting moment, something that is, I'm matter of fact. I say everything as it comes, sort of like what's in my brain comes out of my mouth. Me too, yeah.
I have no filter, which is a good thing, because it means that, one, people are getting the information that they need to hear.
But that's factual. That is what happens. Yeah. We don't have our brain. That's how our brain is set up. We don't have that pause where we have thought something and then we decide whether to say it. That's all in one motion for us. That's very much that is science. That's what happens with our brains. It's sweet.
And everything that I consume, I will like splurt out. My opinions are very much based on my testing those things out. And if somebody comes to me and says, I'm really struggling to achieve this goal in X, Y, and Z, I'll be like, well, your X, Y, and Z are preventing you from achieving your goal because, one, you're fucking lazy. You're eating shit all the time when you know that you shouldn't. You're being unreasonable with your thoughts. Like, I want to achieve this goal, but I'm not willing to compromise on the things that I'm doing currently. And every time I get scared, or every time I look in the mirror, I hate the person that I am because I'm not making any progress. It's like, you're not making any progress because you're not making any progress.
Yeah, if nothing changes, nothing changes, does it? You can't repeat the same things you're doing daily and expect a different result, because that's got you to where you are. That's literally why you are where you are. So you can't repeat the same things and expect a different result. That's not how life works.
Exactly. And for me, it's the pragmatism. I'm very, very pragmatic. And people find it so offensive, like past employers and stuff. don't beat around the bush. Like if you ask me a question, I'm going to give you the answer, and it's going to be very short form. Everything that I do is short form. I hate sitting down, and asking somebody a question, and it comes as an essay, as an answer. It's like, fuck, you could have just said in one sentence what you said in 300 words.
Yeah, and that's some of the reasons I've gotten expelled from my primary school. And like, looking back, I was only 5 or 6, and I was expelled because they didn't understand. It's sad because I was only doing what an ADHD child would do. I wasn't ever trying to be horrible or deliberately doing things wrong. I never had that process in my head that I was trying to upset anybody. But if you don't want to know the answer to the question you're asking me, don't ask me it, because I'm going to tell you my answer. So don't ask me a question and then be upset at my answer, because you've come to me with the question, so I'm going to answer what I think is.
And I'm entitled to my answer. It's a feeling that I am having. It is either something that I've practiced and have very strong feelings about, and like there's obviously a reason for my answer. I'm not making this up to piss you off.
Yeah.
I had that throughout my whole schooling career, if you want to call it that. Challenge teachers all the time.
Yeah.
And like, from the perspective of an adult, I would say that I consumed a lot of books that I enjoyed, and like things that I felt like would serve me as an adult. And then when teachers would question me about certain stuff in class, I would debate with them during lesson, because I was arguing my point. And I would have like my other friends in the class would ask me to sit down and shut up, because I felt so strongly about like she wouldn't see or hear my opinion.
And we have a very strong, I keep saying we, people with ADHD have a very strong sense of right and wrong. And I think I've discussed with people before, and I think that partially that's a natural thing, but also I think that we are like that even more and more as we grow up, because we've been told all the time, you mustn't do it like that, or shut up, don't speak like that, don't do it like this. And we get so punished throughout our, whether that's school or just childhood, we get so punished for things that we're not meant to do, that we create this real sense of like, well, I've been told I'm not meant to do that, that's so wrong. Like, you've been treated as if something you're doing is so wrong. It's very difficult to not then have this real strong sense of like, this person shouldn't do that, you shouldn't do it like this, and be quite harsh with that, I think.
Sorry, I'm having an ADHD moment. This lighting is really good.
Yeah, perfect. So yeah, it's like this very strong sense of what's right and wrong, I think, and that's because we're so punished for that it seems very unfair for things to slip. I think in my life I've found anyway.
Yeah, I don't do grey areas.
Yeah.
There is no such thing. Lazy brain has a grey area. There's black and white. There's yes and no. There's no maybe. There is quantum physics and stuff. Like, there is science. There are unanswered things that we are still trying to figure out, like planetary and like the Big Bang and those sorts of things. There's causality behind that. By asking somebody a question, it's either yes or no.
Mm-hmm.
And fair enough, if the response is, I need some time to think about it. Perfect. Not maybe.
Yeah. Maybes are hard. Maybes are really difficult.
Maybes piss me off.
Yeah. How do you work with a maybe?
Yeah. It's like, okay, well, I don't understand. Like, and that's the pragmatism. And it's sort of like, as you say, growing up, for me, I was shouted at a lot because my parents did not understand my ADHD, and they were always frustrated with me. And I was like the problem child because circumstance. ADHD, it was Neil's like, he's really good at art and he's really good at the things that he enjoys, and like, but the subjects that he does not enjoy, his teachers hate him and he hates his teachers, and he's aggressive in class, and you know, it was this constant like rigmarole, no support. And I think and I don't blame them, well, I do to a certain degree, because they could have picked up some books and educated themselves and invested themselves in better understanding my condition, and I think there's no fucking excuse for that either. I love my parents, but there is a responsibility that needs to be met there with kids and stuff, and that they failed in that regard. But they're a product of their own environments growing up, and they are the way that they are because of their situation. So I'm not insensitive to that. I completely understand that. But there are repercussions to those actions.
Yeah.
And I am the way that I am because certain things weren't fulfilled for me as a young child, maybe even as a baby. And this is really deep in that what I'm about to say is something that I guess not a lot of people get to experience, but I've been working with a very impactful, very, very knowledgeable psychotherapist, and I've been doing inner child work. And I have had revelations that speak volumes for the person that I am. And it is going back to those younger versions of yourself and holding space with them visually in the subconscious mind, where you give back to them what they didn't have at the time. And you ask them, what do you need? You kind of know. And it was the same with all of the younger versions of myself. You then give it to them, and they're thankful. But the response that they had before that, to me, was that they were incredibly fucking proud of the person that I am, despite the challenges I've faced in my life. And it's what's very interesting about the psychology around that is how I've consumed a lot of materials and tried to understand ADHD, and I've watched loads of podcasts and documentaries and stuff, and listened to some very interesting individuals. There's a guy, I forget his name, and I should have written this down, but that's ADHD for you. He is like the king of ADHD. Very traumatic experiences resulted in having ADHD, but he went on to become a professor and one of the most well-documented professors in his field of expertise. And he talks about it. And he goes on to explain like the causality and how it manifests, but how you can go back and kind of piece things back together and do this like in a child work. And when you hold space with yourself in that regard, to rebuild and put back the broken pieces to a certain degree, they're not broken, they're just in fact fragmented. You can do so much good in your life. And that, for me, has been incredibly impactful. It's a whole different subject on its own. But ADHD, there's a lot of people that are being diagnosed with ADHD now. And I see it on social media, and I'm just like, fuck, it's not a disability that's going to kill you. I never went to uni, I didn't finish school. And I was one of the highest paid project directors in the construction industry. And I was one of the highest paid senior project managers in the construction industry in London. After leaving the army, did a master's degree in senior construction management and construction development. And I did these things through the practices of things that I'd learned over time. And I didn't need to go to uni. I didn't need to do all of these things. Your ADHD can debilitate you if you let it, or you can learn to understand it and use it as a tool and a weapon to make you a better person.
Yeah.
But by the same token, you need to understand what your triggers are, what the different facets of your ADHD are, what makes you tick, and be communicative with regards to the emotions that you're experiencing and what you want to understand.
Yeah, and people can't, if you don't understand yourself, you can't expect other people around you to understand you either, because how can they if you don't know what's going on for you? And I think understanding yourself is a key part in just making that switch between it being debilitating or it being something that helps you with whatever it is you're doing. Like my business and the things I've achieved, again, similar to you, I don't think I would have been able to do, or certainly my ADHD has helped with some of those things being because like we said at the beginning, I've hyper-focused on something and I have to finish it, or I have just this real sense of like what it is I want to do and I can't think about what anyone's saying or anything else. So I think those things have actually helped me with what I've wanted to achieve. So like you say, it can be a real good thing. It's not it's not debilitating if you don't let it be.
Yeah, it sets. I feel like it sets me apart from the crowd. I know that when I walk into a room with my ADHD, that I'm the hardest working person in the room.
Yeah, and you're noticed
Yep.
as well. I think you've got more energy for a start in general because of the hyperactivity, but I think you have a strong presence as well with someone.
It gives you an edge.
Yeah, it does.
As much as it gives you an edge, it can also be debilitating.
Yeah.
Because when I didn't understand my ADHD, like as a principal now, I will have self-care hours where I will go for a walk during the day, and I will do yoga as a practice now because it serves me and it helps me calm my mind. And I'll do breath work, and I'll do all these mediums, all these things that I never did before. Somebody said to me once that I should consider doing breath work. And I was like, there's no fucking chance I'll ever do that. It's not for me. Like, I can't sit still. I'm not going to sit on the floor and do breath work.
Opposite of what we're able to do.
I'm not going to
naturally.
meditate because I can't. It's like but I was limiting my beliefs. I was limiting myself by saying that I can't do those things. And doing the breath work and doing the meditation, which I sometimes still struggle with, but it's become so much easier. Now it's become like a natural part of my day. I will wake up in the morning and meditate for 15 minutes. And that doesn't mean sitting on the floor or grounding myself on the ground floor on the earth. It could be sat on the toilet, stood in the shower, lay in bed, or sat upright in bed, or sat on the floor, depending on how I'm feeling emotionally. I will just sit down, I'll take those 15 minutes and I'll set an intention for the day, which has been the biggest thing for me. Setting an intention for the day and holding yourself accountable to just one. Eventually you can build up maybe 2 or 3 intentions. Setting one intention. Today's going to be a good day. I'm going to get through my tasks. Those tasks that I do not complete are not going to disrupt my flow. And then checking in on it has been an incredible thing. And if you do these practices, your ADHD becomes something that really does make you a very unique person.
I think having those intentions is important, or having goals, even if you don't necessarily, some people maybe aren't into meditating, which is great if you are, but if you're not, then I think it's still important to have the goals and targets. If you feel more comfortable calling it a target perhaps, then that is still very important, I think, because you can't, you've got all these things in your mind going on. I've got to do this, I've got to do this, I've got to do this. And I'm terrible. I'll do as much as I like to finish something, I finish things but all at once. So I might start, does that make sense? I start something, and then I do another bit of something, and then I go back to that. And I'll always finish them. Yeah.
It's like,
but it makes no sense to anybody else, because I'll do, as an example, probably not the best one, but I'll do half my makeup, then I'll straighten my hair, then I'll make sure that my bag's ready, then I'll do the rest of it, my hair, and then I'll do the rest of my makeup. Like, that's a bit of a crap example, but you get the idea. I finish everything, but I do it in this weird order that doesn't make any sense to anyone, and I still get it finished. But that's where I think a target is important, because you know what you need to get done. You can do it in your own way, however weird that looks, but you know you've got things to do, rather than just having this like complete mess in your head of all these thoughts you've got going on. So maybe writing them down as well, I think.
I had a very, very interesting thought when I was driving down here, and it was with regards to exercising. Exercise your muscles, they grow. Exercise your mind, it becomes stronger. Exercise your ADHD, you can gain better control of it. And what I mean by that is, you can either be led by your ADHD, or you can exercise it and use it to improve your life, to be better. I, without a shadow of a doubt, believe that my experiences in the construction industry, having started as an apprentice on the tools, has allowed me to flex my ADHD and exercise it. And when I'm cleaning, for argument's sake, I have a way of cleaning, and it has to be followed. and it's the same every time. I will start in the same place, and I will do everything the same way. And it's with logic and thought and process. When you're cleaning, you clean all of the surfaces, everything around it, you do the floor last because shit falls on the floor kind of thing. So it's like, if you're doing any of those tasks twice, it's because you failed at something.
I like that. Yeah.
So I've tried to perfect everything that I do. So when I'm cleaning, and it's much like building too, it's you decorate last because you've got to do everything else before you can decorate.
Mm-hmm.
If you're decorating whilst people are still fitting plug sockets, there's going to be fingerprints all around the plug sockets. So there's a process to everything, and when you break things down and understand that, you make your life easier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it can, by the same token, be debilitating because you're knowing all the time that when you've got to do something, you're going to have to do it properly, and you know how much work is involved because
you're not going to just do it in an average way. Yeah.
Exactly.
There's also a lot of coexisting conditions with ADHD, aren't there? So they talk about how, I can't remember the statistics, but say X amount percentage of people with ADHD also have dyslexia, or X amount also have bipolar, or X amount have all of these other things. I think Tourette's was even one of them I read about more recently, was something like 10%, don't quote me on that, around 10% of people with ADHD have Tourette's, and it's really interesting because there's all these coexisting conditions that often occur with ADHD as well. So I personally I wouldn't say I've got any of those things. I don't have dyslexia, but there are certain things that I do that I find are different to the way my friends do them. So I don't know whether, do you find anything that's you've got alongside ADHD? Is there something that you have that...
OCD.
OCD is one of them.
But I wouldn't say my OCD it can sometimes be debilitating in that cleaning.
Yeah.
If
that's kind of why I wondered. Yeah.
Cleaning has to be done a certain way. All of my washing has to be done a certain way. All of my shirts have to be ironed a very specific way.
Yeah.
That's part of the military as well. That's part of the army. I can't, like if somebody irons tram lines, if somebody's going to iron my shirt and they iron its tram line into a crease, which has been ironed 100 times perfectly, and you iron the tram line and that you can't get rid of, I'll never wear the shirt again.
Yeah, that's the end of that.
Because for me, if I look at somebody and I see that they've got tram lines on their shirt, it tells me that they're not very detailed.
Okay. Yeah.
There's something not quite right there. There's like, things need to be done properly, right? If you're going to iron multiple tram lines into your shirt, you don't. Okay, so there's two sides to this. There's a vanity side of things, which I'm not interested in vanity, and there's a perfection side of things, wanting to do something perfectly and right and properly, I guess. You've ironed one crease in, why not continue to iron the same crease in the same place? It's not hard, it really isn't. It's fucking lazy if you don't. And I don't like lazy people.
Yeah.
And to me, when I see somebody with tram lines on their shirt, it already tells me, I look at their shoes and I see their shoes are dirty.
Yeah.
Or their shoes haven't been
Yeah.
polished.
That's a whole nother topic, isn't it? Like your first impressions as well. That's another thing.
But some people have mental health issues, and I get it, right?
Yeah.
And that's probably in some cases why some people can't do that. They will have those tram lines. And I'm not being insensitive to that. So there are reasons for that in some cases, but in other cases, my life's fucking hectic, and I still iron my shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like, I'm not making. It sounds like I'm making excuses for people to try and be polite. When in actual fact, it's like, if you are in a job where you've got to iron your shirt to look good, do it properly. Then fucking
Yeah, it's not hard. That's a finishing thing, isn't it? Doing things perfectly. Yeah.
So I'd say OCD. I think a lot of people associate. I wouldn't say that I'm bipolar, but there is an association. Being hot and cold.
Yeah, I think sometimes it can come across similar to bipolar, possibly as well. Like you say, being hot and cold, and lots of mood swings, and not necessarily being bipolar, but sort of similar aspects and things that may appear the same, perhaps.
Yeah. I mean, I would never go and look for a diagnosis.
Yeah.
Those things, because I'm happy with I'm happy with managing my own stuff.
Yeah.
And I've taken that upon myself from a very young age.
And you were diagnosed young like me, weren't you, as well?
Yeah,
with
very
ADHD?
young, 6.
Yeah, I was 6. Yeah, same as me, exactly.
And I just don't see the value in, like, unless you're really suffering and you can't hold a job down and like your life is an absolute mess and you need that for like income support and stuff. Fair enough, I completely understand that. But I see so many people using diagnosis for the likes of social media.
Yeah, I think ADHD is almost becoming a trend recently. I'm probably not allowed to say that either, but it does feel that way, that it's like, oh, I've got that, because that's a cool thing to have at the moment. But it's kind of not when you live with it every day and you have like these.
What's really disappointing, and I'm a very strong believer in this, is the number of private diagnoses. So I was diagnosed at 6. I paid £5,000 for a private consultation, which I paid that because I was desperate for help, and that was the beginning of this year. I had to wait 6 months for an opening to get the appointment. And the NHS waitlist was like 9 months or something.
Yeah.
Because of like how many people are wanting a diagnosis.
CAMs at the moment
And I sat down and it was a piece of shit waste of time consultation with Harley Street Clinic, who I'm very happy to mention. Very expensive. The consultant, great woman, she knew what she was talking about, but a fucking that was theft. The amount of money that got spent for somebody to say, yes, you've got ADHD as a prescription. Titration, I went from 20 to 30 in a very short. Yeah, it was 20 to 30 and then 30 to 60 and then 60 to 70 in the space of 3 months. I was just an empty vessel. I absolutely hated the drug. It reminded me of my childhood. I felt like it was robbing me of my creativity. It was making me very good at my work. I was very task focused. Everything around me died. I was irritated, agitated, sweating the whole time. I couldn't consume coffee or any energy drinks or pre-workout, or not that I do take those things regularly, because it would make me incredibly anxious. I just had a very, very adverse reaction, and so I started taking mushrooms. Mushrooms changed my life.
Yeah, I've actually never been on any medication for ADHD, and when I was at school, my school were very they were discussing that and trying to almost persuade my mum to put me on some sort of medication, which is sad really, because it was for their benefit, it wasn't for my benefit, because I was fine.
Yeah.
And I was fine at home.
Shocking women who back in the day, they were shocking them because they were having emotions.
Yeah. It's terrible, because I didn't need that, and I didn't need it at home. But if a teacher was unable to manage me because of their lack of knowledge on ADHD, which is very much, ADHD exists in children. So I believe if you're teaching a child with ADHD, you need to be able to learn how to cope with that and the best way to deal with it, just like you were mentioning with parents. Absolutely. As well. And that's your responsibility as a parent or a teacher, I think, to learn about that and to help the child, because the child can't learn about that and help themselves at this point. So I didn't take medication, luckily, because my mum realised that it just made this school life a bit easier for the teachers, which I don't need to be on medication because it made my teacher's life a bit easier because I was a bit quieter. I don't think that's right. So if it was having a positive impact on my life, then perhaps I would have considered it and we would have looked down that route. But I've actually never taken it. And it's something that I would consider now as an adult, now that I would be choosing to do that to help me, but not being sort of forced to take as a child. I think it's not right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what's most upsetting is looking at lisdexamphetamine and the other variant of it, methamphetamine, I think it is. Probably got that wrong too. they are prescribing it at breakneck speed. You've got ADHD, there you go, there's a prescription. And it's private, so I was paying £120 a month for the meds.
So do you believe that's why there's so many diagnoses recently happening for ADHD? Do you think potentially that not everybody has it either?
I think that the world is becoming very frail and fragile, and that people are soft, and that, yes, you'll probably find that a lot of people, I think ADHD is normalizing in society. It's becoming more prevalent because people can't deal with confrontation. And I think ADHD is changing. I think it's becoming broader than what it actually is in its simplest form.
And it's a bit like where people use the phrase that they're tidying something. It's my OCD, or I've got OCD. But you don't necessarily have OCD. Some people that sort of certain things, qualities of a condition like that, it doesn't mean you've got it because you have one quality of it. Like, it would be very easy for someone a bit hyper to say, oh, I've got ADHD, but it doesn't necessarily mean you have got ADHD. And I think that's where it can get confusing for people, possibly. I don't know if you believe the same, but I don't think you can just diagnose yourself because you have one quality or one sort of symptom of ADHD doesn't mean you have ADHD.
Yeah. I think a lot of people are self-diagnosed.
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to say.
And then they're consuming a lot of materials online, saying, yes, that's me, that's me. I relate to all of these things. But the process and the investigation, when I was diagnosed, it was 5-6 hours of sitting with a doctor.
At least,
and him making me read and play games and observing what's happened to that. Where's the observation? My consultation was half an hour. And I was rushed. And she was late. And I was just like, fucking hell, $5,000. And yes, there was a follow-up consultation. And then they were trying to lead me into more for follow-ups, to pay more. I was just like, what am I paying for?
Yeah.
Like, okay, I've been diagnosed. It's a private sector, so it's, you pay an arm and a leg. And then because it's not NHS, you're paying premiums for your prescriptions. And through the NHS, it probably have been about £60 or £70. I don't know if that's correct, but I know that when I was on 30 milligrams, I think I was paying 40 through the NHS a long time ago, 2017, for about a period of 3 months. Flushed that down the toilet because it nearly made me take my life.
Yeah.
That and a combination of citalopram mixed together. And I tried to hang myself. Unfortunately, my wife found me whilst I was doing that, which is very difficult for her. She didn't know how to deal with it. Beat the shit out of me, which probably wasn't the right thing to do in the moment, but she then called her mum, who came around, and they tried to calm me down, and they didn't understand it either. And it was suppression of several emotions over several years, and a combination of drugs and alcohol combined with citalopram. And even when I wasn't consuming cocaine and I was just taking citalopram and the lisdexamphetamine, I would sweat, be anxious, and be like, the best way to describe it is a wounded animal. I struggled in crowds. I struggled in my working environment. I used to have to chair meetings with big companies who I was delivering work for. And I'd sit there, and all I'd want to do was rush through the meeting so I could get out into fresh air. And so these things sort of just led down a very horrible path. Citalopram, a drug also that I disagree with, that is used for people that struggle with ADHD, quite often is prescribed alongside it. I don't know why. If you aren't depressed, if you just have ADHD, you aren't depressed, doctors should be telling people to go and sit outside and exercise outside, go and spend time in green space, meditate, do yoga, not put this chemical in your body
Yeah.
change the chemical of your brains.
Certainly, if you don't have depression, to give someone an antidepressant. Yeah.
And the statistics on citalopram are disgusting. They are it's such a harmful drug. I can't remember the numbers, and it's something that I looked at quite a few years ago. But the vast majority of teenagers who are prescribed citalopram suffer with depression, kill themselves.
Yeah.
Like it was 80% or something.
Wow.
Teenagers that were on citalopram end up killing themselves. And it's like, okay, one, the drug does not work, so why are we still prescribing it? Everyone that I've spoken to that uses citalopram has said the same thing to some degree. And there's one or two people every now and then where the drug actually works for them.
Yeah.
It's very occasional. But those are separate things. Depression and anxiety and ADHD. Like, treat ADHD for what it is. It's attention deficit disorder or hyperactive disorder, ADD or ADHD. It means that you just need a kind of environment, people that understand you, for you to be able to work in harmony with everything else. Depression and anxiety comes as a byproduct of being stressed in your environment and stuff. Depression as another byproduct of other things that may have occurred to you in your life, all treatable with therapy. Drugs, I have a very strong opinion on those things. I think that there is substantial and conclusive research into psilocybin, which is mushrooms, and how they help people with depression, anxiety. Anxiety is a bit of a fluffy subject for me. I think that anxiety is not a condition. It is a condition, but it's not a disability. Anxiety is a byproduct of one's environment, the experiences of the environment you're having, and the people that you hold space with. Things that create an emotion for you, or create a thing for you, or past experiences that you may have had to go through, which might have been unfortunate. Those things create anxiety. Anxiety is something that you can remove by taking somebody from the corporate world who is suffering and working a job that is killing him or her, and say they've enough money on the bank. Take that person away from that environment. Take them, for argument's sake, to somewhere hot with the beach and the ocean, and put them through 2 weeks of surf lessons and yoga on the beach and mindfulness and like healthy eating. They come back a different person.
Yeah.
What happened to the depression and anxiety? Where did that go? So you can change people's environments, you can change people's lives, you can change people's hearts. And I will precursor this by saying that that's not the case for everyone. Some people are that badly damaged and hurt that they cannot get away from their trauma. And no matter how much therapy they do, no matter how much green space they absorb, they can't get away from the damage that has been done to them, and they end up in many cases taking their lives, which is sad. But, you can't control what's going on inside. You can learn to understand it, like with ADHD, consume materials, be there, be consistent, and just keep your opinions to yourself. For me, if you know somebody has ADHD and you can see they're having a bad time, go and give them a hug and then give them space. And say to them, if you want to talk, I'm here for you. Don't try and give them advice. Don't try and tell them what to do with their lives. Don't try and tell them that they need to get off the couch and sort their lives out. Just be there constant. And if you find materials that you've found, so here's a good example. Somebody once tried to put me in a Facebook group. And I went in and I spent maybe 15 minutes max. It was 5 minutes. Reading through it. And it was all about husbands and wives complaining about their partners and how difficult their lives were because they couldn't understand their ADHD. don't do that. Don't be doing that. Rather do things that serve both of you as individuals, or if you're a parent, find a hobby that your child enjoys and invest in it. Be there for them, watch them grow, watch them excel, and cheerlead for them. Be their biggest cheerleaders, because that will build their confidence and make them the best versions of themselves. And that will also open doors and leapfrog into other modalities of things that they want to experience and the best achievements that they want to chase.
I think it's channeling it, isn't it? Which you can help someone with by encouraging those things that they enjoy, or their hobbies. Or I went to endless amounts of after-school clubs to find something that I could channel my ADHD into, something that I could enjoy and put all that energy into something positive. And I think I was guided, luckily, by my mum in the right direction, because I don't really know where it would have gone if she hadn't supported me to use it in the right way. Because she laughed, because she said I would have either I would have done this and created a successful business, or I would have ended up in prison. Like, it was always going to be one or the other. And luckily, thank goodness, I had a mum to direct me into this route but I don't know, I would have gone off the rails, but I didn't, so I'm here. It could have gone either way, I think, is what we were saying.
Yeah, it's an interesting machine, ADHD. When you come to fully understand it, it becomes, you kind of like become a friend. I very much feel that now, as before I was of the mindset that it was debilitating. And I wanted to believe that, because every time I failed at something, I was like, oh, it's my ADHD. That hasn't gone well for me. Oh, it's my ADHD. I can't sleep. Oh, it's my ADHD. But did I meditate before I went to bed? Did I do breath work and calm my body and calm my mind? Did I practice and put these things in place before? And there's always a very simple answer. You can always, from a linear perspective, draw conclusively why certain things are occurring in your life. So it's trial and error. You've got to work out what works for you with ADHD. And in my experience, it's not your enemy. It can be your enemy if you let it control you. But we are all powerful beings. We are able to build and go to the moon and create satellites. Like, take control of yourself.
Make the right decisions and do what is in your control.
Exercise yourself, exercise your body, exercise your mind. Understand why these things are occurring in your life. And if you are struggling with overwhelm, sit down and work out why you're struggling with overwhelm and put something in place to prevent that from happening. If you're struggling with anxiety, understand why that is, put things in place and exercise them. And you will come to learn that in doing these things, you become healthier and better, and your life improves, and everything around you improves, and you don't see the world as your enemy, I guess.
It's using the right tools and understanding and learning about yourself and teaching people around you, I think, if they don't understand you, what works for you, how they can manage you when you're in certain situations, and what feels healthy for you when you are feeling overwhelmed.
Very much agree.
Good talk with ADHD. We managed to actually get what we're saying out as well.
Yeah, no, it was very good.
Our brains weren't too all over the place.
I felt like my brain every now and then was wanting
Just a quick twitch.
But I think now that you said that, I've exercised a lot of things recently, and that has stopped me from spiraling into several other subjects and digressing and having to come back. I think it probably is attributed to the breath work, and without a shadow of a doubt, the meditation. Calming the mind, taking control of anxiety, holding all of those things, understanding them, and really understanding, I guess, if you plan for something and you aim to do it, that it is going to be what it will be, and that you can't control everything, and then it will manifest in its own way.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's in a nutshell, I guess, ADHD in its finest form. And yeah, I hope that somebody can take something away from our conversation.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you feel like there's somebody that can benefit from this, please share it, and yeah, leave us a comment, get in touch with Emily. I will end on hyperlink. I'll put her social media in the comment section, or in the description rather. And yeah, reach out to me as well if you want to talk. Flick me a DM, flick Emily a DM. I'm sure she would be very happy to point you in the direction of help if she can't help you herself. I guess 3 things for me would be to train and remain consistent with your training, to eat healthily, and to take up a form or a hobby that serves you if you're struggling with ADHD, and be consistent with those things. And I guess something that would bind all of those 3 things together would be to learn how to communicate with anybody that is living with you, and get that individual to consume materials to help them understand ADHD. Because education is power.
Great. Help those around you to understand you, as well as learning about yourself.
This has been amazing. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you.